Gary Rosewell with us. We're very happy to have Gary with us because you're not an engineer, and this is actually really good to me because it's going to bring some different perspectives to people that we normally speak with. You're a marketing professional. You have amazing experience in sport business, and you're the founder of Sport 176 Agency. Hello, Gary. How are you doing?
Very good. Crikey. That's an intro. No, really, really good. Thanks, Gerard. And yeah, good to be talking to you too. Enjoying this British summer. I think it might have just ended today. All the sunshine's gone, but no, really good. Thank you.
Great stuff. So normally, Gary, we talk with people and we start from the beginning, right? There's a lot of things that I'd like to ask you today, and I want to get right to the end because you have really good experience, as I was saying, but we always start at the beginning. The first thing I'd like to ask you is, who is Gary Rosewell? Where do you come from? What are your origins?
Cool. Okay, so we'll start at the beginning. I'm from a region of England called Somerset, so it's way over in the southwest of the UK. So I guess a bit of a country boy at heart, you know, very well grounded, from very modest sort of upbringing. And I guess for many different reasons, that's probably why I live in Wimbledon now, in London, in the southwest of the city. It's very green, very open, you know, a great community spirit. Everybody's out hiking and running and cycling and so forth. So, you know, very humble beginnings. And now I have a really nice balance between a working life as an independent and doing all of that sort of country type of stuff that I really enjoy and have done since I was a kid. So have a really nice working life balance. And yeah, I'm really enjoying doing my own independent business thing at the moment with Sport 176.
Great. So we already can see the picture in your background of an old Renault with the ING library. This already kind of reveals where this conversation is going to head to. But let's start maybe with where you studied. What did you study, and how did your story begin, like from the professional point of view?
Yeah. So I guess a big part of the reason why I went to uni to do international business and French, you know, a big part of the rationale for that was my upbringing with my dad, I guess. He was always watching sports. You know, he was very inquisitive. He always had a very curious mind. And, you know, it's definitely rubbed off on me over the years. And, you know, I've grown up watching a lot of TV and film and what have you. So my focus was always very international. Mm-hmm. So I went to UE, Bristol. It's a university that's got a great reputation for engineering, actually, particularly on the motorsport side of things. They've got some great technology there. You know, they are very, very well integrated to local businesses, Rolls-Royce and what have you. But the business school is excellent as well. So I studied at Bristol Business School, International Business and French, and I did a year in France as part of an Erasmus course as well. My French is pretty solid these days. I've managed to keep it going over the years. French writing is a bit ropey, but to speak is great. I've used it in my career over the years at different points. I also went to the University of Bristol after a brief couple of years in between for working experiences, and one of those years was interning with ING Group. So I was very fortunate to find some fantastic experience in the world of global sports and Formula One with a fantastic sponsor, one of the best in recent years of Formula One. And that set things up for me, right? It was really interesting, really fun, a great group of people. And I couldn't have asked for a better experience, really. Before, it was around 10 years ago, we had a financial crisis in the UK. And it was just a very pertinent time for me to go back to university and do a master's. And that was in international relations. So again, very internationally focused. I enjoy getting to grips with different cultures and people from around the world. Got best friends now, you know, in France and Italy and all over. So, you know, we all call in favors and we want to stay with each other, and we've learned a lot from each other over the years. So yeah, just a very internationally focused person. Work hard, play hard is probably my mantra. That's something we definitely live by on the University of Bristol course. You know, we had a great time there. I'd recommend both universities, no end.
Very good. So this kind of sums up a little bit your student life, right? And you briefly mentioned a little bit on your internship. It's probably a good point to start talking about your steps as a young professional. How did you start in the industry? What was in your mind? What did trigger this desire to start in a specific industry? And How were you given the opportunity, or how did you earn the opportunity?
Yeah. I'm asked that a couple of times by different students, and a lot of Formula student competitors actually get in touch saying, how did you go down this commercial road and this and the other? Well, I guess it starts with passion, right? Because if you are passionate about a particular subject, I think that's half of the battle done already, because you're interested in it, you're engaged in it, and as long as you have, I've got the 5 Ps that I would call it, I guess, to really chasing your dreams. And that's passion, number one, but then patience, because nothing really comes without hard work and, really putting the effort in there. And that's something for me, I've really learned the hard way, because I expected, the glory and all the rest of it that comes eventually in Formula One, but it does take a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And I think before the Lotus role that I had, I probably had 8 different jobs doing grassroots marketing skills work, worked in hospitality, I worked for hotels, restaurants, any form of menial task I would get involved with. One, because my parents wouldn't let me stay at home, and 2, because, I knew that just well-grounded experience would help me later in my career. So, passion and patience for sure, perseverance, P number 3, because nothing comes around without being very resilient to failure. Failure happens to all of us at some point or another. And how you deal with that and come around from that as a professional and as a person goes a long way into supporting your future career. If you can deal with setbacks and use it for strength and moving forward in your career, that's absolutely huge as well. And the last 2, people and presentation, networking, building relationships, working on your people skills. If you're not in a particular role that you want at that time in your life, what are you doing around that to help you get there eventually? And for me, a big part of that was LinkedIn networking and talking to the right people, and just a very positive glass half full mentality, I think, can really help you get to that end goal. And goal is a key word as well, right? Because you've got to have a goal and a bit of a vision and purpose. And with the right attitude, you'll get there eventually. And the last one is presentation, because how you really hold yourself and present yourself in any relationships can go a long way to how your career pans out in the future as well. So, we'll cover this actually in one of the modules, but one of the things engineers in particular can maybe learn from marketing is people skills and how you hold yourselves in interviews and the way you present yourself in any interaction. Just think the amount of interactions we have on a daily basis where you're selling yourself. You might be buying something at a shop, you might be, looking for a new car or whatever it is. Somebody at some point is going to make an assessment of you and whether they can trust you and invest time into you, and whether you should be allowed to do business with them, for example. So presentation, along with people, perseverance, patience, and passion. I think the 5 Ps, really sort of simmer down how you should go about thinking about getting to a future career. And for me, they've been invaluable before I got the ING internship.
This is actually great. I love frameworks, right? And this 5P framework of your, I think it's amazing. It demonstrates that engineers and marketers are not so different, because we love to have structure and to know what we have to do. And these kind of frameworks help us to solve problems and really try to get to the next step. So I think this is an incredible piece of advice to everybody at any age, really.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the framework that you use, right? After you finished your your studies, you found your first role.
Yeah.
So what happened then? Can you tell us a little bit of how were the beginnings?
Yeah. So the role in particular, just to break it down a little bit, when you're in a marketing team, whether for a sponsor or a rights holder like a team, like Mercedes F1, or maybe even a marketing agency working on a sponsorship, all of the work that you're doing to bring that partnership or sponsorship to life is referred to as activation. So you can invest in a partnership, but then you bring it to life by activating it. And that might be in public relations work, hospitality events. It might be with content production. There are 101, different things you can do with partnership activation. I wouldn't list them all now. But what I was doing with ING on the internship was internal communications and employee engagement. And I think that, just saying that shows the depth of the partnership that they had. because most partnerships are very outward focused. So they focus on external consumers. Ultimately, they're trying to sell products and services to the likes of you and me and people all around the world. But ING developed a whole team focused on internal communications and made sure.
No, I mean, I think this is amazing, right? So there was this big bank, I think they're from the Netherlands, if I'm not wrong,
Exactly, yeah.
into Formula One team because they wanted to improve employee engagement. How amazing is that?
One of the reasons, exactly. You know, it's a global workforce of 125,000 people, I think. And, you know, the perception of the brand externally, but also internally, is a hugely positive thing. And we found after 3 years of the partnership, the employees were more engaged. They were, you know, inspired by Formula One themed activities. You know, maybe there were sales incentives, commission programs, you know, all kinds of different things that helped employees work towards a better working life through the sponsorship.
Wow. So activation then is really the key word, right? And that's kind of the activity that reflects a goal, no? And you go through the activity to achieve a goal. And can you tell us, I'm sure there are like several goals, right, that someone might want to use activation for, but what are the most common ones?
Yeah, so take ING for a first example. So it really started with brand awareness for them, and through an exercise of heavy branding. I mean, you couldn't have missed their brand. It was on the cars, the uniforms, Enstone, the HQ of Renault, track signage, you know, a myriad of different platforms for brand awareness. So you couldn't miss the brand, number one, and all the research sort of said that. But secondly, they were looking to really drive business to the company. And they did that through a number of competitions and various different activations to really drive revenue into the business. One example of that might have been saying ING direct customers in Spain, if they were to up their bank account amount by 500 euros, they would be entered into a global competition to come and attend a race in Barcelona. Mm-hmm. So just a very, very simple activity whereby money coincides with a competition initiative. Now, another really good example is actually Petronas. I was working with Petronas last year while working with an agency called Crunch Communications. And Petronas have already achieved over a number of years with Mercedes their brand awareness targets. Now they're really looking to deepen their technical ties with Mercedes and talk about performance as their story. So last year, you know, we had a number of different guest programs at races where we brought in media to really see what Petronas products, so that's the fuel and the lubricants powering both Lewis and Valtteri's cars, around the track to another World Championship winning performance. And just showing firsthand that Petronas's products and services were having that effect on the car, and having Lewis Hamilton talking about that firsthand, that's an incredible testimonial for the brand and an incredible brand building program that they have there. So just a couple of examples of brand awareness and technical messaging. I think they're two very common ones in the sport.
Very good. And I think while we're at it, maybe if I may ask, why would a company invest this money into a Formula One team, right? Because at the end of the day, there are several possibilities in different channels that you can achieve maybe this goal through. But it tends to be like F1 is very specific, very particular. So why would a company like Petronas or like ING why would they choose Formula One to achieve set goals?
Yeah, so brands are, what this really boils down to, I guess, is what we call brand communications, and the way a brand can communicate with consumers to ultimately affect their emotions. And the reason for that is because emotions are the basis of sales, effectively. It sounds bad, but ultimately marketing partnerships always come back to sales. Brands invest in it because they ultimately want to generate business off the back of these investments. So sport is one of a number of different partnership platforms. You could have music, you could have film, maybe the arts, for example, with theatres. But sport is a very wide-ranging partnership platform because of audience numbers. Fans are extremely loyal and passionate and emotional, and it reduces the barriers to communicating with a wide audience. If you just think without sponsorship, you maybe have more traditional platforms like TV advertising or radio or news outlets, print media. And because of cultural differences and language, competitor branding campaigns, things like that, it often creates these barriers to communicating with audiences. But sport opens that up, and regardless of language or cultural norms, people can really engage with the same thing regardless of those things. So that's the reason for why it's so attractive. And beyond that, Formula One is an incredibly exciting platform. Obviously, it's the power of motorsport is fantastic. It's exciting, it's powerful, it's competitive. And you may remember that there was a recent campaign from Formula One actually called Engineered Insanity. And what that really alludes to is that this sport is so technical and very complicated and interesting, but at the same time, at its roots, it's just pure excitement. And it's insane. That's what they're saying through this campaign. So, it caters to a wide audience, both people who are technically interested, but those who just want to have fun. And that's why it's so entertaining to watch, and it's why brands want to engage with it.
That's great. So we have, together with a friend of mine, sometimes we have this conversation on trying to justify the reasons why brands would want to do something like this, or why, for example, Daimler would want to spend money through Mercedes-Benz into Formula One, right? And if you try to look at the ROI, the return on the invested money, you have to think about, or this with this person, right? This friend of mine, he always brings up what's the equivalent TV time that you have, plus, so I mean, that being on a Grand Prix weekend, the car with all your livery, with all your branding, etc., being on the TV, racing on the racetrack. So that's that factor as well. But then in parallel, there's also a lot of media, like online, offline. Is continuously talking about sport, about Formula One, about technical innovations, about what drivers are doing, how they are training, and every time any journalist or any article mentions a driver or a race, your brand is going to be mentioned, right? And that's something I find really interesting. And this friend of mine, what he did was, you have to compare the equivalent kind of time or the amount of information that is shared about your brand to other means of advertisement, right? So to achieve that amount of engagement, what could you do elsewhere that would bring you the same level of return, right? And that really is something. I mean, I hope that you can shed more light into this, because you're the expert, really.
Was your friend Toto Wolff, by the way?
No, it's not him. No, but I mean, I'm sure you have more details on this, and you have something to add on top, right? Because you're the expert, and you can add more details and in a better format and easier to understand. But investing into a marketing platform like Formula One, if it's aligned with your brand, it's really a good idea.
Yeah, 100%. And particularly for an automotive brand like you were talking about, because, for one, a lot of the technology that's developed in Formula One will trickle down to the automotive industry eventually. And it's such a rapid prototyping and, proving ground for automotive technology. That's a large reason why these companies invest in it, and it's legitimized with shareholders because there is a business development reason and rationale behind it. When you look at a brand like Mercedes, you already alluded to the equivalent brand value that it generates in the sport. I think it was nearly $500 million last year. So equivalent advertising value just refers to the amount of seconds that Mercedes brand is visible for during the race weekend testing, all the touch points of TV production around the world. And there are agencies that calculate that visibility and then multiply that by the average cost to advertise on television around the world to calculate a return on investment. It's very subjective. There's a lot of different parts to that, and it doesn't mean that because you look at a brand, you're going to buy one of their products, but it's a good early indicator of the sort of return on investment you get from the sport. So brand value, technology trickle down, imagine all of the energy conservation and harvesting technology that's come off the sport in the last 5 to 10 years is just astonishing, particularly in terms of battery technology and things like that. And a very clear example, imagine investing that technology into one of your leading products like Project One for Mercedes. So those cars are upwards of $2 to $3 million a piece. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. Are they even developed yet? I can't even remember, but I know for a fact that they've all been sold because it's the closest experience you can get to Formula One. They even use the same drivetrain, I believe, as their F1 car. Lewis Hamilton endorses it. The engineers have been involved in the development of that car. So, automatically you've sold out on a line of a couple hundred of these vehicles at 3 million a pop or whatever it is. And that's a huge revenue generating platform as well. So, yeah, lots of different revenue generating strands. And it really goes a long way to legitimizing the investment that the teams put into it.
I love the example of the project one, right? Because it's about, I think, positioning and revenue. So if you are in Formula One, the opportunities for positioning yourself or your brand as a leader in innovation and technology are huge. Yeah. And also opportunities for increasing revenue in different streams that maybe you're not able to tap on or to touch on at the moment also open up, right? I think this is that's the main reason why the likes of Renault, Mercedes, and so on and so forth, they want to get into this sport.
Absolutely. Take merchandising for an example as well. That's a huge, huge revenue generating platform. Lewis is wearing caps produced by Puma. It's endorsing the brand. There's a different cap virtually at every race. And it's a huge selling point for the company, along with other fanware that they have, the jackets, the uniforms, games, even off the back of it. Merchandising and licensing is a behemoth in the sports industry. And just another example outside of Formula One, if you look to somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo, who plays for Juventus, his value when he was purchased was extortionate. I mean, he's a fantastic player, but the money is it's quite sickening, actually, sometimes when you think of the amount that they're paid a week. However, I think it is the case that just within a few days, the team had already recouped the investment in the player just through merchandise sales alone, because people were buying Ronaldo's shirts. So if you think in terms like that, it's a no-brainer for making that type of investment.
Wow, that is really astonishing. That's incredible.
Yeah, we're in the wrong industry, aren't we?
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's an incredibly interesting industry, right? It's really, really interesting. And I think there's passion involved, there's uncertainty involved as well. So you have to be really, really clever and good at managing uncertainty. And I think this speaks about yourself as well, because the 5P framework that you told us about, shows that you're really good at managing uncertainty. So no wonder why in this industry, people like you are needed, right? So I think that's been a great introduction to the topic of conversation. I wonder now if we could maybe just go back to your career, because I think your career path can be very beneficial to a lot of people, right? And I think I want everybody to know about you, and I want them to know what you have been doing. So you worked with ING on the F1 program.
Yeah.
And then I was checking your LinkedIn profile and I saw a short stint at an agency called IMR, International Marketing Reports.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit, what did you do there and what kind of projects were you involved in?
Yeah, so they're a really interesting company. They're based in Bristol by a guy called Simon Rhines. He's a fantastic colleague, and I learned a lot from him at the time. He was a bit of a mentor. And we were working together on actually activation reporting. So looking at sports as a whole and generating some of the best case studies for brands that have marketed themselves very, very well in the sport in general. So we're looking at things like the Rugby World Cup, cricket competitions, the Olympics, Formula One as well, and looking a lot at ING because they are just such a good case study. But yeah, it was a fantastic grassroots position before I went on to work at Renault, later Lotus, because they went through different iterations. But I think the IMR period for 3 months or whatever it was there, that added another string to my bow. And I always encourage everyone to just keep learning. I've only been in this industry 10, 12 years. It's still, it's a good amount of time, but it's still very little compared to a lot of other people out there. And I'd say that you never, ever stop learning, right? And that's a really important thing to keep going as a professional and keep practicing those basic skills you learned as well, because activation reporting is something I've done in these modules. And that's a skill that I honed at IMR, over 10 years ago now. So really important. And I think the other thing just to add to that as well, is, I've had experiences probably at 8 other jobs before the Renault F1 position. And that ranged from, catering and hospitality through to supporting charities on the phones, door-to-door sales even. God, I hated that role. But I learned from it, some valuable people skills. I learned that I didn't want to do it, which is important in its own right. But just, as a young professional in particular, it's just so important to get as much experience as you can, generating those people skills and basic marketing skills or engineering skills for that matter on that side of the fence before you go into another career. And employers will look very favorably at that if you've had the mentality and the modesty and humbleness, I think as well is probably a good word, to go and experience different things before you go into the world of motorsport or sports sponsorship.
That's a great piece of advice. Sometimes I come across people that aren't sure on like what they want to work on, what kind of career path they want to follow.
Yeah.
And, first thing I say is, that's okay. I mean, we never, we don't get born knowing what we have to do, what we want to do. And it's okay for some people to have this passion or being extremely focused on having a specific job or career path. But a lot of people aren't like this, right? Some people don't know what career path they want to follow. And that's exactly what I tell them, what you said. Just try different things. Don't be afraid of failing or doing something that maybe it's not going to be what you want to do eventually.
Yeah.
But I think you can either learn or otherwise, right? You will not fail at all. So I think it's super important. You just learn from every single experience.
Massively.
Whenever you're going through different positions, you're going to come across different people as well. And I think people are the most important thing here. You will learn lots from people with diverse backgrounds. I think that's absolutely an invaluable asset. Yeah,
really good point on that one. Actually, was after the role with Renault and / Lotus, I had a role with a sports marketing specialist agency called Prism. And we were working there on a global recruitment platform called the Infinity Engineering Academy. So I'm not sure if you've heard of that one, but it was an opportunity for the world's best young engineers to work for 6 months with Nissan or Infinity, and then 6 months with Red Bull Racing at the time. And a lot of the engineers coming through the ranks to the qualifying finals for that, they were super determined, even though only a certain number of people would get through that. And, not everybody did, and some people were disheartened. But one of our Chinese finalists in particular came back the second year, and she persevered and she worked hard. And then she went through and she became an engineer. And I think she's now working for one of the F1 teams full time. So she really learned from that initial letdown experience, learned from it, improved her skills, improved her people skills in particular. And she's gone on to bigger, better things, and it helped her grow. So good example.
That's amazing. So maybe it's a good time to talk a little bit about this program with Infinity. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it was and some more details? I think would be great. What was your role?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah. So I guess from working with Lotus, like many Formula One teams, is based deep in the countryside. They can get away with making a lot of noise and not annoy too many people. And for me, at the time, I really wanted the action, and that was always going to be London. London is the home of many, many different sports marketing agencies, people who specialize in guest experiences or public relations programs and activation in general, actually. And Prism stands for Public Relations and International Sports Marketing. And they were and still are a leader in the sport and entertainment zone. They look after Infinity still. They look after Aston Martin's marketing requirements with Red Bull or now Racing Point, Ford. They look after a couple other brands as well, tobacco brand with McLaren, for example, as well. So, lots of partnerships, lots of experience. And for me, it was a real game changer, actually, in terms of my marketing skills and experience. Because for one, in Formula One, time is so precious. There is no time really for learning and development. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to feed off more experienced people. And an agency like Prism was a great place to do that. So I started on the Infinity Formula One account. They were title partner with Red Bull Racing. And much like ING initially, it was all about brand awareness. But there was a growing need to develop a technical collaborative program with the team for a number of reasons, but mainly to show the sort of depth of expertise that they have on the technical side of things. Infinity was not a well-known automotive brand. Nissan is their parent company. They're the luxury car kind of umbrella brand of it, so to speak. So they really wanted to communicate and position themselves as a technical performance brand as well. So we came up with a concept of a recruitment platform that would double as a public relations campaign as well. So there was a big, a lot of work on the stakeholder relationship side of things to get this program off the ground. We wanted the academy to be credible and to really make a difference in the world of Formula One for the engineers that they would be working with. So there's a big job to convince leading Red Bull engineers, the head of the drawing office there, heads of various departments, vehicle dynamics, aero, electronics, that this was a credible activation and it wasn't just going to be a flash in the pan, unfortunately, typical marketing campaign that is not very substantive. So I wanted to make sure we changed that. We built some great relationships, but it also, over the years, progressed into an activation that generated a lot of marketing awareness for Infinity, and it was a great public relations campaign. And over the years, it's become probably the leading recruitment platform for engineers in the business, and it's been copied a couple of times. I mean, it wasn't an original idea. There were other recruitment initiatives before. There always are in Formula One, but this one took it to the next level in terms of its global marketing and the way it engaged engineers at universities. So yeah, really, really big program. I enjoyed working on it because, as I said, we were giving away just fantastic opportunities for engineers, and it was great to be a part of it.
It must have been quite a big challenge to tactically make it happen, right? So yeah. Can you tell us some figures of how many people applied to the program? How many countries did you travel to? I think logistically it must have been fairly challenging.
Yeah. So the first year was really just to get it off the ground. I think we might have had 1,000 or 2,000 applications, something of that sort. But yeah, applications from, we focused it on Infinity business markets. Mm-hmm. So I think it was 5 or 6 markets that were able to apply. We whittled that down in terms of recruitment to a final of about 10 competitors from across Europe, the US, and Asia as well. So yeah, in terms of logistics, managing all of the administration behind the scenes, I think, was the biggest challenge in year one. Besides the stakeholder management side of things and convincing people of the stature of senior motorsport engineers about a marketing program is not always the easiest of challenges. So it was something I was pretty proud of eventually, that we'd earned the trust of engineers to come on board with this program. And by the end of it, Adrian Newey endorsed the program. And he was giving out the awards in the final that we had. And I think it was 2 American engineers and 1 British guy eventually that have won in the first year. All of them have gone on to great opportunities. One works for SpaceX now, another for a leading IndyCar team, I think. And Will from the UK, he went on to work for Dyson eventually as well. So it was a great platform for them. And it was a really good testimonial, I think, for the strength of the program eventually. But in later years, several thousand applications for sure, from leading universities. We hosted 6 finals around the world. I went to most of those. It was great promoting the academy as well. So I think in 1 year, I went to Dubai about 3 times, certainly to the US twice, Mexico twice. Europe, certainly 5 or 6 different events around there promoting or hosting finals. So yeah, it's extensive. The reach was brilliant in those early days of the academy, and it's only grown. And yeah, just to meet students of that sort of caliber around the world who are super enthusiastic about what they do, and they just want to do a good job was a real honor.
I think that's great. A great activity, I believe. So you're generating the value that the brands wants to generate, whatever it may be, right? In this case was the specific one that you mentioned. Engineers, professionals from Formula One, they love the idea because they love sharing what they know. They love talking about their passion as well. And they really want to talk about it with people who are passionate about the same things. which is the key thing, right? And then engaging this with young talent that really want to get into the sport and just learn from these people. And ultimately what you did was helping all these young talent achieve their dreams, right? So I think this is a great opportunity, a great project to be involved in.
It was cool, and it's still going. Some challenges this year for obvious reasons, but it's helped the careers, I think, of 30 students now from around the world. So it's been really good to be involved with that. But more to the point, I think the way that the engineers were assessed was quite interesting actually as well, just as a slight shift off. But we wanted to ensure that engineers were tested both technically and in terms of their social and people skills as well. So, guys from their respective departments of the F1 teams actually put together an exam that would test the real knowledge of each of the students. And then we would put them through group and team building activities, some of which didn't even have a right or wrong answer, but it was just to assess how they collaborated and to see and decipher who would take control of the group, who would lead, people's diplomacy skills and how they collaborated and eked out ideas from more perhaps quiet people in the group, and how they really listened to them and worked together to come to a common goal. So I think just in terms of, the people skills of it, it was a very interesting experiment in terms of talking to engineers as well. And that's something that we'll be alluding to in the module, because it's a really important aspect, as you know very well, right?
Absolutely. I remember for any interview that we would go through at Mercedes when I was working there for young engineers, there was a very clear technical side of the interview, but there was a very important people skills side of the interview, and also a reasoning side of the trying to assess the reasoning capability for every person, right? Because at the end of the day, you're working long hours in a pressurized environment. There will be problems, and you have to be able to solve these problems together with other people with other backgrounds different than yours potentially. And what counts is the goal, the common goal that we have. And we have to achieve that goal and solve any problem that we might find on the way. And you have to think creatively as well. So I think the way these interviews are structured are in a logic way to assess that you are the right person, that you have the technical capabilities that are required, that you can work with people in the right way without causing any friction with the team. But also whenever you're going to encounter a problem, the solution that you're going to propose, it's actually something feasible. I remember, I think is a video that Mercedes F1 shared of an interview with Mike Elliott, in which he was describing an interview question that he would normally ask young engineers, right? And he would ask them to calculate the forces needed in terms of aero downforce generation for a car to drive upside down in a tunnel. And then, the students would go through it and come up with the right answer or not. Maybe he would need to help them a little bit. But what's important here was that he's first analyzing how good this young engineer is. And then when the person gets to the final result, he asks them, all right, this is something good you would do. You would really suggest that we go into a tunnel and we kind of try to achieve this. And this is a teaser question, right? Because some people might only see the numbers and say, oh yeah, it's possible. Let's go and do it. But then if you think about how much money a car costs, how many people are involved in running the car, and also the health and safety implications for the driver as well, it's something that if you just mention the right things and you say, all right, maybe this is something that I wouldn't do because of these reasons, you're going to get the job right away, right? And I think it's exactly what you were saying.
Did you have, let's switch this interview around, Gerard. How are the challenges for you when you were working at Mercedes? Because, you've been in there, you've been involved with a multiple world championship winning team on the technical side of things. So was that, an incredible challenge for you at first with your people skills? Were you quite nervous? Were you under pressure? How did you deal with that at first?
If I reflect back on my first months at Mercedes, I remember I was extremely nervous because I thought I wasn't good enough, right? I think this is a problem I had always. I always think I'm not good enough for whichever task.
Yeah.
And it's something that you learn with experience, that is not about being good or bad, it's about learning and learning fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of really, really nervous. And it's okay to be nervous, right? This is like a self-defense mechanism that we all have naturally. And this kind of make you learn much quicker on what you really have to learn. Yeah. So I think technical skills, I was okay, I was fine. But what really helped me a lot, I believe, was the people skills, right? So I would get on really well with everybody. I worked in aerodynamics. Yeah. The Mercedes aero department is quite big. We're 100 people, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And I considered that department to be my family. I knew everybody. I was working around different sub-departments within aero, and I would ask them about their families, their partners. Yeah. And I think that was great. And this is what makes a team, right? When you care about people, the first thing that you ask them when you encounter them on a Monday morning, you ask them, how was your weekend? What did you do with your children? Maybe this is going more into a leadership kind of thing. But it builds the relationship with the person that you have to end up working really hard with and trying to find solutions to problems you have, which is basically in aero, is finding aerodynamic performance. Yeah. And this is a huge cycle that involves surface design, mechanical design, CFD analysis, wind tunnel testing, and wind tunnel test data analysis as well. And you have to talk to technicians, to engineers, to purchasing people. Yeah. So it's a wide range of professionals with different mindsets and different abilities. You really have to understand everybody and know what their language is and be able to connect with them. And it's when you connect with them, that you speak at the same level, that you can extract the best out of people, right? And I think this is what's key in every industry, in every professional.
Yeah, yeah. That must have been very exciting, though. Goodness.
It was exciting. So why don't we transition now about your time in Formula One? Because I'm trying to get into a final question, which is, what are the differences between working as a marketeer in an agency or for an end client? If that's the right word. But before I can ask that question, I would like to go through your experience working directly for Lotus F1.
Yeah, okay. So when I joined them after ING, they were called Renault F1 still at the time. And then there's a lot of commercial changes. So eventually it became Lotus Renault GP, and Lotus F1 team eventually was the designation they stuck to. And originally I was working there on the acquisitions team. So very much all about sales and presenting and pitching to potential new partners, or pitching to existing partners for a renewal deal, and bringing them on board. And it was a really, really exciting, engaging, new, challenging, extremely time-consuming position. You know, I was very green, I had a lot to learn, but I was willing to do that, and it was a very exciting place to be. You know, particularly because the team had some really challenging years. And I think challenging is the right word, because they saw themselves as a challenger brand. So we were all effectively in a bit of a startup again. Despite Renault's history, they had to restart. You know, we had a new brand, we had a different brand positioning, so to speak, a different offering, different drivers, and it was all new and very unique and exciting. So my daily routine would have been based on researching new brands, their objectives, their goals, where they saw themselves now and where they wanted to be. And then based on the marketing tools that we had at the team, putting together a bespoke presentation and delivering that accordingly. So a lot of background research, a lot of anticipation of brands' needs, and talking with lots of different people at the team, whether commercial or engineering, because maybe there's a technical aspect of the team that we can offer a brand in order to bring them on board. So a good example of that would be with Avanade, who are a very deeply integrated, how would you describe them, IS brand. I would imagine they provide a lot of products and services in the IS sphere. And they wanted to benefit from testimonials of our head of IS. And that was something that we could offer, you know, absolutely. We benefited from their employee expertise coming in and supporting us on particular technical projects. Software is a huge element for research in Formula One, as you know very well. So lots of mutual benefits to that particular partnership. Unilever, a huge global brand, they came on board, from a brand building perspective with specific brands in mind. So some of their hair care products or fast-moving consumer goods brands like Walls, I think was one of them at the time for ice creams. Something as simple as that. But it was something that we could position our hospitality program to cater for. You might have seen a shot of Kimi Räikkönen eating an ice cream at one point. That was a Unilever ice cream, and
that's great.
Good airtime, good airtime, didn't that? So, just a lot of creative thinking, and in much the same way that you guys on the technical side would have a whiteboard and, just creatively brainstorm, let's go down this road, let's go down that road, let's pull in these people. We did exactly the same thing in marketing. And for that reason, I think I've come up with the term of social engineering. We engineer people on the marketing side of things. And, I enjoy that. I really enjoy that creative process and working with a lot of different people to conjure up a solution to a problem and making that happen. That's the enjoyment I get out of it. And ultimately, it's all about growing brands and growing the team. And I think I like that challenger status, so to speak. I think I've really found that over the years. It's not about the glory necessarily of Formula One. It's not about champagne. It's not about all of that juicy stuff, although that is a fun aspect to it, and I do enjoy working with the drivers. It's about creating a solution to a professional problem and working towards that. So yeah, it was a really interesting role. I did 18 months on the acquisition side of things before asking for a slightly different role on the partner services side of things. So when a partnership is sold in and their contract is in place, a sponsor or a partner then has a lot of marketing tools to use to help grow its brand. And every partner at a Formula One team will have a dedicated account manager to help manage and see out that partnership worldwide. So whether it's in terms of logo approvals, merchandise designs, hospitality requirements, senior management appearances, all of the logistics, administration, organization, every aspect you can think of is taken care of by an account manager with their respective brand. And I looked after 6 official partners, various different sizes. Again, I was a junior. I was very, very green at the time. So, I looked after a couple of reasonably large ones and then some other smaller ones. And, I would be very fortunate to go around the world to various races and help them activate their partnerships and bring them to life. So a great eye-opener, really solid experience, quite challenging in terms of time. You ask most people in the marketing side of the business, one of their biggest challenges will be time because they're just so busy all the time. Got old colleagues who travel to every race and every event in between. So that's 21 races together with testing, together with other activations in between. It's a very time-consuming business, but one that, I relished at the time before I moved on.
So there's something that people maybe not directly involved in the sport tell me is that Formula One is extremely glamorous, right? And people who travel to trackside events enjoy a really great glamorous lifestyle. They get to meet all the celebrities. And I never had a role that was trackside as an engineer, but I know a lot of people who travel trackside, and I think glamour is probably the least or the last adjective that describes their job. Yeah. Maybe you can shed some light into the commercial or the marketing side of things when teams go trackside. What are the challenges actually of that?
Well, I think, time, as I was alluding to, is a huge one because you're just effectively, you have a race every couple of weeks. So if you're not on the ground managing one event, you're thinking of another, maybe the one after that. And I remember last year I was account directing Petronas with Crunch Communications, another specialist agency. And I actually didn't travel to a single race. I was managing a team of social media professionals, content professionals, PR, hospitality professionals who would go away and manage those events while I would be on the ground at home planning for the next 2 or 3. So we had quite an efficient sort of process for doing that. But yeah, timing and thinking on your feet, it's an incredible challenge. There's a lot of plates to swivel at the same time while managing extremely high expectations from your partner who expect nothing but the best. It's Formula One. Why wouldn't you not expect anything but the best? You're working with Mercedes, who brand themselves with pride on being the best, and they are.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so the devil is really in the detail, and that could come down to little things about terminology, about how you use the Formula One logo or the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Motorsport, as it was last year. That's changed now. Logo and team name terminology, because if you get that wrong, it's not consistent, and that will feed up the chain to various levels of Daimler potentially at some points or another. I think one of the things I've come to understand about Daimler and Mercedes is their extremely effective and efficient communications and PR sort of way they conduct themselves is uber professional, and because of that, their brand is seamless, really. And it fits what we have in our minds about Mercedes products. They are the best or nothing, as you said. So the devil is really in the detail. That's an incredible challenge. And I think timing is an incredible challenge as well. I think one other thing, as a young professional coming through the ranks, I really would have benefited from a bit of an arm around the shoulders and, somebody guiding me or teaching me or having the time to train me. But there isn't time for that very often at Formula One teams. There is, to some extent, there's a little bit you can pick up from some people, but a lot of the time you're going to be learning from mistakes and you're going to be learning on the fly. And, maybe that is the best way of learning ultimately, but sometimes it's not an enjoyable process. Mm-hmm. And, I think people coming into the business need to have a very, take a step back sometimes and think, look, why am I really thinking about going into this industry? Is it for all the glamour and the glitz and all the sort of superficial stuff? Or is it really because I take personal and professional enjoyment in all of the things that really help that team perform? Because if it's about growing brands or, creating solutions from problems on the technical or marketing side, then go for it, because that's the real rationale for why you should be there. The benefits of it are that you can enjoy some incredibly good times as well. And better than anybody how it feels to win a world championship. And, it makes all of your work worthwhile. And, so I'm trying to think what we did at Lotus. We had one win at Abu Dhabi with Kimi, and all of us just went crazy. It was such a relief to have performance like that and make all of the hours and the time you commit, worth it. I think we've got a great photo somewhere that we might be able to dig out, but it's a fantastic feeling. But that was a result rather than a reason for going into it initially.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it goes think as you were saying in the beginning with your 5P framework, right? Passion is one of the words in that framework. I think we're all passion driven, right? And we're doing this because we love it, and because we get really excited about the prospect of working in this industry and getting involved in all these activities and all these projects. But in the same way that a Formula One driver is an athlete and has to prepare, has a very specific training program, I think all the professionals also in this industry or in the sport are also athletes in one way or another. As you were saying, the requirements and the demands are really high. Even if it's like engineering or marketing, everybody's under pressure to deliver. Huge pressure to deliver actually. And there's a lot of things that you have to do to keep yourself at the top level or the best level of performance that you can have. You are responsible for doing set things, right? And on a personal side of things, I remember, for example, engineers at Mercedes had people who were specialists in sleep, right? Because engineers have to have their own, like the hours of sleep required for a human being to perform at their best. They have to go through these hours. And it's not only about having sleeping the right amount of hours, but also the quality of that sleep is really important. Having a specific maybe training regime is important. Even if you're not an athlete, but really exercising helps the blood flowing through your veins and keeps you energetic, keeps you active. That's extremely important for you to be at your best, and also eating healthy, right? So you have to eat really healthy. And if you do these things maybe on your private life, something you can control and you have to be disciplined about, then you will always be performing at the best. There's so much we can learn from the athletes, really.
Yeah. If you think back, 20, 30 years ago or whatever, mechanics performing pit stops did not have the nutritional or sort of professional health and well-being advice that they do today, right? Red Bull Racing is a great example as well, where the training and nutritional program of mechanics, it has just, it's jumped leaps and bounds. And it's for that reason they were able to do pit stops in whatever it is, 1.5 seconds. It's just absolutely crazy. But yeah, it's a big thing. And I would add to that by saying, for people to have the self-awareness to really step back and acknowledge that there is a wider world than just motorsport and your professional career. And, I'd really encourage people to pursue other hobbies and passions and things like that, because it can become quite overwhelming, I think, at some points. And I remember when I was working for Lotus, I wanted the team to succeed so badly because I was working on acquisitions, and a big part of the success from that comes with team performance, right? If a team performs, we can help sell potentially a little bit better. And it didn't happen. And I got really engrossed in that. And it was a bit of a spiral at some point. So I'd certainly encourage people to step back and acknowledge that, you can be doing other things. It's really important to invest time in personal projects and loved ones and things like that, so that you can come back to the sport, back to your profession, and do an even better job and just smash it out of the park on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. So maybe now is the right time to ask you that question, right? Working at an agency against working for the end client or the end company. Give us your thoughts on this, right? What are the pros? What are the cons? What's the best for a young professional, maybe someone who's fresh out of uni? What's the right place to start? And what are the differences?
Yeah. So you touched on some of the key players there. And I think that really creates a bit of a sort of a holy trinity, whereby you've got the rights holder or team here, the people controlling the rights to activate a marketing partnership. So take Mercedes as a rights holder, or Formula One management. They have their own partners. They're also a rights holder. You have a sponsor or a partner who is using the marketing rights of a rights holder. And then in many other cases, you have a specialist agency who will work with a partner to bring to life this partnership that they have. And there's many reasons for that, mainly because it's such a large partnership that they need external professional experienced assistants to really do that. Imagine if you have a guest hospitality program at the Monaco Grand Prix of 100 people, that's 100 people with extremely high expectations of first-class service, administration, hotels, transfers, catering, visas, tours, and your whole experience package may need to be managed by a professional agency. So that's just the hospitality side of things. You look to content production as well. Very specialist agencies can look after that process and probably should. Some sponsors have in-house content production teams, but it's normally agencies that do that for a fee. And that might be doing activities with drivers. Daniel Ricciardo and Lewis Hamilton are famously very good at their different activations because they've got very engaging personalities, and they're open to engaging with people in a fun way to some extent. So hospitality, content production, PR programs, a lot of those are managed with the assistance of activation agencies. Just to talk about that holy trinity again, there is a sort of a tripartite relationship there. So the rights come from the top here, which is your sponsor, your team, managed by a sponsor with the assistance of a specialist agency. And there's a lot of communication between the three of them. To illustrate that, last year I was working as a freelancer for Crunch Communications, a specialist sports marketing agency, on behalf of Petronas, and we were activating Mercedes partnership rights. So all of the marketing tools that you can think of, whether it's image rights, logos, hospitality, driver appearances, Toto Wolff interviews, all of that, beautiful stuff that we can use to grow a brand, we would help Petronas activate with the support of the team. So lots of communication behind the scenes, lots of negotiation and I can even say diplomatic conversations, because, we all want the best thing, which is to grow Petronas's brand, but not everything is always possible. So we have to work with Mercedes in a way that we can all agree works for everybody. and gets the most value out of the partnership for Petronas. So in terms of who people should work for and look to work for when they're junior, I think I almost did things the wrong way around. I started with a sponsor, then worked for a team, and then worked for an agency. I would definitely suggest working for an agency because the variety of experience that you get there and the training and the sort of progressive, very professional training programs you can have with agencies like that, you can just learn so much, and you're exposed to many different areas of a partnership. With a team, I might be wrong for some teams, I can't speak for all of them, but in my experience, there's just not enough time for a new person to really pick up the skills that will benefit them in the future. Working for a sponsor is a very different experience. Again, you're almost at the top of the food chain, so to speak, because you're in command of the budgets. You're initiating the creative direction of your marketing partnership. We want to achieve X, Y, and Z objectives. Talk to my agency. What do I want my agency to do? I'll talk to the team and I'll instruct them on how to work with this agency on bringing this partnership to life. So that's very different, again, to some extent, the top of the food chain, and a very different experience. But you're focused on one partnership. At an agency, you could be working on 1, 2, 3, very, very different partnerships and varied experiences. And then finally, at a team, when you're working there, again, the lack of time is, for me personally, something that would worry me if I'm going to work for a team again, but is obviously very exciting. You're working very closely with the drivers, with the cars. You're there on the ground at many of the events, and you're pulling the strings on a lot of different things. If you work for a team like Mercedes, my God, it's super exciting. You've got the performance to back it up. Just another world of experience. But your time is extremely precious, and you're going to be at the beck and call of a lot of people because you're in demand. You're in demand for the right reasons, but you need a very resilient, uber resilient personality, I think, to stick out many years at a team.
That's great. So I think it was an amazing explanation. It's clear that you're very knowledgeable about the industry, and there's a question I'm going to head over to next, which is about the course in the Motorsport Academy. But before, I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk. Now that you mentioned that the industry basically is fragmented, there are a lot of opportunities. I really want to touch on your agency, right? So you're working as an independent with Sports 176. The industry is so fragmented that there are opportunities for people to become independent and still have a really, really interesting profession, career, professional path. Tell us a little bit about what you do, who you work with, and how's the future looking?
Yeah, how's the future looking? Crikey, that's an interesting question right now. But I guess we'll draw it back first of all. So how did I come about starting Sport 176, and what's the rationale behind that? Well, when I left prison, I left to go and travel for 6 months. Actually, I went abroad for a while. I did a sabbatical. I love travel. It's something I'm still extremely passionate about. And I love just getting out there and amongst nature in the mountains. And, it's good for the soul, good for mind and body. And I met some incredible people on that trip that had a very well-balanced sort of perspective on life. They had a lot of time for professional endeavors, a lot of time for still pursuing personal hobbies and things of interest like that. So it made me start to think, maybe there's another way of doing things in terms of your professional sort of working life. And I came back, and I was very fortunate to be recommended for an opportunity with an agency called We Are Fearless. And I didn't expect that at the time, but I worked there as a freelancer, and I really enjoyed it. And I came off the back of that, and I was determined to make a more independent working lifestyle work for me. A couple of other opportunities came up the following year with my old employer, Prism. I was working with Aston Martin and with another of their partners, actually, Intercontinental Hotels, working on mass participation running events. So a different experience again than motorsport, working in marathons, and working with another agency called Threshold. So there was a bit of a pattern emerging of working with specialist sports marketing agencies on events, public relations campaigns, content development, all of the marketing work that is developed off the back of a partnership with a rights holder. And one of the biggest ones was last year with Crunch Communications, and I came in to support them initially with a account planning for the year. As we were saying earlier, time is such a valuable commodity in Formula One that, they really needed assistance in terms of advanced planning for different activities. And I stayed with those guys for a year as an independent, eventually working as an account director, managing a small team of marketing and PR professionals to deliver lots of activations and ultimately value for Petronas with Mercedes-AMG Petronas. So it's, the rationale for going down the independent route started from a willingness to have a little bit more independence and agility. I think I love using that word. Opportunities came from different areas, and it snowballed into something that, I'm pretty proud of now, because I can approach different businesses and try and help them with their sports marketing challenges. So it's very varied, while still having time for other pursuits as well, whether that be travel blogging or trekking or whatever that might be, because it's something that I'm very passionate about as well. So a very balanced approach to working life is what I have now. I think I always got too engrossed in roles, and you have to recognize that there's more time for other things. So that's in a nutshell the sort of structure I have for my professional approach these days, and I really enjoy it.
Amazing. So you are very knowledgeable about the industry, right? And there are some challenges ahead for everybody due to the global pandemic affects all industries globally. Some people sadly are suffering more than others. But where do you see opportunities going forwards?
Well, we'll come on to one of our final modules, which is actually focused on esports, which I think is a huge opportunity for brands around the world. Many are taking advantage of that already. But I think what the pandemic has done is it will uncover a lot of opportunities for people that maybe weren't considered before. So there's a lot of people who are going to be using it as a new chapter when things open up a little bit more. I think we're definitely going to see a migration from event-based marketing to online marketing, more content generation opportunities, because people just aren't traveling. And off the back of that, it's really changed people's perception, I think, of travel and events. Do I need to travel as often as I used to? Can I work more from home? The amount of people digesting content online and engaging with online content is increased, no ends during the pandemic. And I think it'll continue that way as well. So I think we're going to see a lot more investment in esports. We're going to see a lot more investment in content. It was going that way anyway, but there will be more and more and more of that. So opportunities abound for specialist sports marketing agencies, I think, to really think differently, think creatively, even more creatively, that is, and deliver brand awareness, brand growth, brand affinity through different forms of content. I think content is the key word there. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think another thing we explore in the modules is the power of influencers and brand advocates who have a very engaged audience already to support brand growth. Taylor Blevins is an esports brand ambassador, and he recently moved to the Microsoft streaming platform Mixer from Twitch recently, for those of you watching who know those streaming platforms. And he was paid upwards of $20 million, I think, to do that, which just goes to show the power that influencers really have on an audience. And brands are willing to part with a substantial amount of cash to reach that audience. So yeah, I think without going into too much detail, I think esports and the need for content online will only grow even further as we go on. I hope, sincerely, because I love going to sports events. I love traditional sports. I hope that we can still do more of that in the future and we get over the pandemic, hopefully, fingers crossed. But it's going to be some time, I think, before that happens. So probably next year, we'll get back into the events kind of side of the business.
Yeah, it looks like it, definitely. Right. So you've been touching on your course throughout the conversation. And I think people by now are excited about the course, about their opportunity to learn from you. You have extensive experience in sports business, sports marketing. The course is titled Introduction to Partnership Marketing in Formula One. What else could you tell us about the course that could help us understand better what it is about?
Yeah. So yeah, I think introduction is the key word. What I wanted to do is really simmer down the key subjects within sports marketing and deliver a bite-sized course so that people who are maybe new to sports marketing or want to learn more about it, or for engineers in particular who want to understand a little bit more about the commercial side of the business, can look at the course and come away with a basic understanding of things and maybe develop the knowledge a little bit further and, interact with me as the course leader and potentially assist with their professional opportunities in the future as well. So it's really simmering down what's quite a complicated behemoth of an industry really behind the scenes. When we watch Formula One, we see the entertainment side of it, all the action on track, but there are a myriad of different activities going on behind the scenes that are not talked about. And it's really interesting when you look at it like that and really break it down. As we go through the modules, there's an emerging sort of storyline that I hope is very easy to follow. And that goes from really just the ground basics of sports business as a global industry and what it's all about, through to sales and the nature of consumer behavior and why sport is a very pertinent and effective platform for some brands, right the way through to some case studies. We look at ING in particular, how engineers interact with marketeers and what they can learn from each other. In particular, how a more well-rounded understanding of the commercial side of the business can potentially help engineers, with their people skills, interviews, CVs, the way they present themselves and engage with people on a daily basis. And then we finish on esports just to wrap things up and sort of look to the future as well. So it's, as I said, a bite-sized course. It's not exhaustive. There's a million and one other things that we could be talking about. But I think the core modules really address some of the principles of sports business, why it's so attractive and effective, and what we can learn from it, particularly with a bit of an engineering lens, because it's really important in the world of Formula One.
Amazing. Well, Gary, thank you very much. We've run out of time, unfortunately, because I really enjoyed the conversation with you. I'm sure people are going to love the course. You've been opening up with your experience. You've been really inspirational. People will love hearing from you in the course. So thanks very much for being with us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gerard. And speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. So this is the end of this video. You can find more videos and courses from professionals from Formula One and the motorsports industry at our website, motorsportengineer.net. But until then, stay healthy and see you soon.